What's going on, guys? This is the Full Check Podcast. Again, I'm your host, John Gervasi, and today I am finally starting the 30 and 30 with the Anaheim Ducks. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. I kind of mulled over it. I kind of wanted to go in on the Buffalo Sabres, but I figured that I would save them for they're actually in like 3 or 4. So even got the Ducks shirt on today from my floor hockey days. So there's that. But yeah, this is Full Check, August 12th, 2021, the beginning of the 30 and 30 as we start with the Anaheim Ducks. So the Ducks, to me, the Ducks are exactly like my San Jose Sharks, but also more like the Los Angeles Kings in terms of where their rebuild is right now. I think the Kings are the team in California who's the best team in California right now. So there's that. I don't know if there's really any. Yeah, there's nowhere to where to put it. The Ducks are second, the Sharks are third. But if we look at the standings from last year, we have the Anaheim Ducks 2018-2019, not a bad club. 35, 37, and 10 with 80 points, 199 goals for, 251 against, and a minus 52 goal differential. Now, the OT losses, I think, are big because if they win those games, obviously they're 45 and 37, and they add another 20 points. Or no, they add another 10 points, so they'd be at 90 points. Big thing, that's big. But also, if they lose those 10 games, they are 35 and 47, and they're sitting at 70 points. So I think that was their last year. I think the year prior, they did make the playoffs. I think that was a year that they had lost. They got swept by the Sharks in the first round, who then went on to lose to the Golden Knights. I think that was really the last sort of stand in this window for this Anaheim Ducks team. And then the 2018-2019, they had a chance to make the playoffs and they missed it. And that was really a start of, well, we're in this rebuilding phase. 2019-2020, they went 29-33-9, or in 9 with 67 points, 187 goals for, and 226 against. So that was the shortened season due to COVID. So they didn't play the full 82-game schedule. So would they have surpassed 251 goals against, or would they have surpassed 187 goals for? Who knows? Still not a terrible record. With those last games that weren't played, could they have made a run? Who knows? They had a minus 39 goal differential, though. And you start to see that as a pattern with the Anaheim Ducks the last 3 years, is that their goal differential is starting to go down. 2020, 2021, they went 17, 30, and 9 with 43 points, 126 goals for, 179 against, minus 53 goals differential. Now, this was also the shortened season, but this season didn't start till January, so it was only I think it was like a 56-game schedule, 52, somewhere around there. This was the low point for the Ducks. I don't know if it can get any worse for Anaheim right now. They had 126 goals for, 179 against. A full schedule, then the goals against probably rises. I don't know if the goals for gets any better. Last year for the power play, they were dead last in the league at 8.9%. Penalty kill was a little better. Their percentage was 79.9%. That was good for 16th in the league. So their penalty kill was a little better. For a while there, even the Minnesota Wild had a worse power play percentage than the Ducks, but then the Wild kind of heated up at the right time, and that's how that went. Your team leaders were Max Contoy with 16 goals. I probably just destroyed his name. Ricard Raquel with 19 assists. Contoy again with 33 points. Trevor Zegras was a +6. he led that category. John Gibson, their starter, was 9-19-7 with a 903 save percentage and a 298 goals against. Here's my thing. The Ducks are not in win now mode. So I'm predicting that John Gibson will probably be traded somewhere at the trade deadline. Obviously, not the case right now. In all honesty, I can see John Gibson maybe getting traded to the Colorado Avalanche for a Darcy Kemper or picks and prospects. Maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs. Who knows what will happen with Peter Mrazek. Sorry, guys, I'm tired. But, if you look at teams that need goalie help right now, I would probably say Colorado's at the top of that list. If Freddie Anderson doesn't pan out, maybe Carolina looks to add another goalie. Dallas, I don't know if Holtby is that guy anymore, and Khudobin, so Dallas is probably a question mark there too. Edmonton desperately needs a goalie, but I don't think the Ducks would trade within the division unless they got a plethora of picks and players, mix and match whatever you want. Vancouver maybe, but Vancouver's probably in cap hell right now because of the fact that they need to re-sign Elias Pettersson. Pettersson doesn't want to stay there, and we'll get to that when we get to Vancouver, but who knows, that situation might change. Just any team that really, maybe Montreal, but they got Carey Price, who's supposedly coming back from injury. The Capitals are set at their goalie. Maybe the Flyers, because we don't know if Carter Hart is that guy, and Martin Jones is terrible. Martin Jones is Swiss cheese. The Penguins really need a goalie because Tristan Jarry proved last year in the playoffs that he cannot handle the pressure. He made very, very bad plays in the playoffs, but they fired their goalie coach and hired a new one. So, there's that too. But, looking at teams around the league that really need goalie help, my number one is probably Colorado, and I'm wondering if there may be a deal at the deadline to acquire John Gibson from the Anaheim Ducks for picks and players, and then it's not a division rival like Edmonton. Anaheim will ask for everything, including the kitchen sink from Edmonton, I think. So I think John Gibson is a very, very good goalie. I think that John Gibson gets a lot of the blame in Anaheim, and when it's not really his fault, much like Freddie Anderson got a lot of the blame. But this team is not good. This team is very young. This team will not be making the playoffs within the next 2 or 3 years. They're in better shape than San Jose, but that's not saying a whole lot because Anaheim doesn't have the giant contracts that San Jose does, unless you count John Gibson. But we'll look at cap friendly in a little bit. So some key returners and key acquisitions. They got Ryan Getzlaf. It's a cheap contract. If we look at cap friendly here real quick, if we find the Ducks, the Ducks aren't close to even being, or ain't even close to being in cap hell. They have $14 million in cap space. They are missing 3 draft picks for next year's draft, but they have a Maple Leafs draft pick for round 5. But if we look here, Ryan Getzlaf is a $3 million deal for 1 year. So, and he signed a no movement clause. So my guess is he's going to retire after this year in Anaheim. He's 36 years old. And I understand you want to keep some of the old guard. I think a 1 year, $3 million deal for Ryan Getzlaf is a good deal because they're not going to win this year. So let him retire as a Duck. I think part of the reason that Corey Perry they had let go of Corey Perry was they thought they were still in win now mode, and maybe they thought Corey Perry wasn't in their future plans. So there's that. But if we look, if I look, they're a very young team. Average age looks to be about 20, 25, 26 years old. You've got Jakob Silverberg making 5.2 we'll just say $5.3 million for the next 3 years. You got Adam Henrique, who might have been a bad trade. But anyways, yes. So they gets off to a 1 year, $3 million deal. I think this is a good signing. He's not going to produce a lot, but I think this is more of a loyalty move. If Anaheim had made deals this year to contend, I would say the Ryan Getzlaf signing was probably a bad deal because you're not contending anytime, or because you're signing an older player to a $3 million contract, one who's not producing anymore. But since they're not really contending yet, I think that this is a good deal for Ryan Getzlaf and for the Anaheim Ducks. $3 million is not a big deal for someone who helped bring you the franchise's first Stanley Cup and also played in the Stanley Cup Finals against New Jersey, and really was left there to pick up the pieces after Paul Kariya had left the first time. So, okay. Then, they went out and signed Brogan Rafferty. Doesn't look like his contract is on cap friendly yet, but they signed Brogan Rafferty. He might be a minor league contract, but it was a 1 year, one-way deal. 26 years old from the Vancouver Canucks. Last year in the AHL, he scored 7 goals, had 38 assists for 45 points, and he was a plus 17 in 57 games in Utica last year. 26 years old. I mean, for 1 year, one deal, or for a 1 year deal for in a one-way contract, maybe he steps it up this year. Danny O'Regan from the Buffalo Sabres and the San Jose Sharks, 27 years old. Last year in 25 games, he had 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points. Greg Pateryn last year, 31 years old. He had 0 goals, 3 assists, and 3 points in 13 games for the Avalanche, the Wild, and the Sharks. They re-signed Isaac Lundstrom, who was 21, 6 goals, 3 assists, 9 points last year in 41 games. Sammy Steele, 23 years old, 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points in 42 games. And Max Jones, 23 years old, 7 goals, 4 assists, 11 points in 46 games. They also re-signed Comtois, and if we look, I had it up here. Oh, wait, I think it might be here. Yep. So Maxime Comtois, I'm assuming it's Comtois, signed him to a 2-year contract extension, $2 million for the next 2 years. He's 22 years old, led the team in points and goals this year. Led the team in goals and points this year. So I think that again, young team, good signing. $2 million for a 22-year-old, probably not the worst thing in the world they could have done, honestly. And so I think, in all honesty, personally, my opinion, I think key departures are Ryan Miller and Hayden Fleury. Hayden Fleury left in the expansion draft to the Seattle Kraken. Good young defenseman. I think that was the defenseman. It might have been the forward, but good young player. Ryan Miller, he's not a key departure for the stats that he puts up. But in terms of wins and losses, last year wasn't very good, but very good veteran leadership in the locker room. I don't know, aside from Getzlaf, who on this team has that veteran leadership that Ryan Miller does, but we will find out. This team is young. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This team is a very young team. They are not ready to win yet. You've got your young stars like Trevor Zegras, Sammy Steele, like Comtois. Raquel is 28, so I mean, I think I've seen situations where Raquel is on the trade block, along with Henrique and Silverberg. I don't know if Henrique and Raquel or at least I don't know if Henrique is the guy that's going to carry this team. But no, Comtois is 22. Sonny Milano's 25. You've got Troy Terry still 23 years old. Max Jones is 23. Volokov is 24. Sammy Steele is 23. Lundstrom is 21, like we just talked about. The defense is relatively young, aside from Shattenkirk and Larson. Cam Fowler, Lindholm, and Josh Manson are 27 to 29. Shattenkirk will probably get dealt at the deadline. Larson is 24, so he'll stay. But I think Shattenkirk will be dealt at some point at the trade deadline. I don't know what he was doing signing there. In terms of goalies, you have 28-year-old John Gibson and Anthony Stolarz. Gibson is making $6.4 million for at least the next 6 years plus. Ryan Kessler is on injured reserve, so you're paying him $6 million after that. After this year, his contract's done. Corey Perry, $2 million in the next 2 years. So after 2023 or after 22-23, you will have $8.8 million added to your cap, depending on what they do next year. I don't think the Ducks need to do anything, in all honesty. I personally think the Ducks need to stand pat. The only trading the Ducks should do is probably getting rid of Henrique's contract, getting rid of John Gibson if the right trade comes, getting rid of Jakob Silfverberg, anybody that's kind of doesn't fill that rebuild or who can help another team win a cup now, because the Ducks aren't going to win a cup anytime soon. And Adam Henrique has kind of regressed in the last few years. So any way to get this team younger, they're rebuilding smarter than teams like the Sharks and even the Sabres. And again, the Sabres also need a goalie, but they're not in contention. But the reason I bring up the Sabres is that maybe they could bring in the Ducks could attempt to trade for Jack Eichel. Obviously, Jack Eichel is not happy in Buffalo, and we'll get to that in a couple days. But the only time you bring in a guy like Jack Eichel is if your team is winning and you want to buy into the fact that. So next year, if they start out, let's say 20-13, and by the deadline they only had let's just say they're 30-20 at the deadline. That's probably not going to be a record at the deadline. I don't know when the deadline ends in terms of games played, but then you can kind of look at, hey, are we in contention? Do you think we could do this? Should we sell off more pieces and get younger? Or do we go for a guy like, Jack Eichel or other players of that nature? Personally, I don't think the Ducks are going to have a winning record by the trade deadline. I think by the trade deadline, John Gibson and Henrique will be on the trade block and either gone or about to be traded then. Or even at the All-Star break. Actually, I don't even know if there's an All-Star game this year. I know there's the Olympic break, so there might not be an All-Star game. But during the Olympics, you could hear that John Gibson has been traded, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And then last but not least, their draft. Their first-round draft pick, Mason Mccabbage from Peterborough from the OHL. And I only have one draft prospect brought up right now because at this point, he's probably the only one that may make the roster out immediately. So for EHC Olton, he had 9 goals, 2 assists for 11 points. In the playoffs, he played 4 games, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points. For Canada U18, he was the captain. He had 5 goals, 6 assists in 7 games for 11 points, 10 penalty minutes, and he was a +10 in the plus-minus. His last season for the Peterborough Petes in the OHL, he had 29 goals, 13 assists for 42 points, 31 penalty minutes, and was a -4. So obviously a very good pickup for the Ducks in the draft. Again, young talent. You need young talent. In order to win in this league, you have to have young and veteran talent. I think Mason Mccabbage probably fits that role better than any, especially in a weak draft. This year wasn't the strongest of drafts, so I don't know if Owen Power was the consensus number 1 pick up until this past year, because it was usually Atu Ratty who was the number 1 pick, and he fell. But we will see. Their second draft pick was Olin Zellweger from Everett of the WHL. Number 3, someone that I will get to know very well, as I am a Notre Dame fan. I love Notre Dame hockey, and this player will be an incoming freshman at the University of Notre Dame, Sasha Pesuyev from the USA U18 team. I'm really excited for him. I heard a lot of good things about him. So Anaheim Ducks, if the hype is real, Anaheim Duck fans have a good player on their hands, and we will see how he performs at the University of Notre Dame as a member of the Fighting Irish hockey team. Number 4 draft pick, they drafted Tyson Hines from Rimouski from the QMJHL. Number 5 draft pick was Joshua Lopina from UMass. Number 6 was Sean Tishgary from Calgary of the WHL. Number 7 was Gage Alexander from Winnipeg of the WHL. And number 8 was Kyle Kukkonen from Maple Grove High School in Minnesota. So, obviously, there's a trend here. They drafted a lot of junior players, but, I mean, in terms of college and juniors, I think college is catching up, but I think the junior hockey in Canada still has the better prospects. But I think that these were very good draft picks. I think Gage Alexander was a goalie too. So, I mean, they could be drafting for a future without John Gibson. That might be why they may make a trade, or why they drafted Gage. I'm really excited for Sasha and Mason Mccabbage. Everybody else, I'm sure I'll be excited for the more I see of them. But I think that two of their 8 draft picks are going to hit it, and they're going to hit it hard. I think Mason Mctavish will be on the opening day roster. I don't think you draft a guy at 3 to have him sit in the AHL or to go back to juniors. So this team. So I'm going to do a prediction, but with the Ducks, you just don't know. I mean, they're not going to have a winning record. How many wins they have, I'm not going to put them in the number 1 draft pick category like some other people are. I think they'll be at 10. They'll pick like 10th through 18th. I don't think they'll be as bad as the Sharks. I don't think they'll be as bad as the Sabres. But again, it all comes down to how you perform. I don't know. Maybe they won't be as bad as the Canucks. They play in the same division. So Calgary I don't know what Calgary's doing in all honesty, but I think they'll be better than the Sharks and the Sabres. But games aren't won and lost on paper. So teams like the Stars and the Red Wings and the Senators, they could be better this year. They could still be the same. So I think that time will tell. I think based on the last 3 years and what they've lost and what they've gained, I'd say 20 to 25 wins is a good prediction for this team. I'd say 20 to 25 wins. 30 may be a stretch, but if John Gibson can steal some games and the Ducks get more production out of their young stars, I'd say 30 wins is a possibility, but I think 20 to 25 wins, they're not going to be a playoff team. But then again, I say they're not in the number 1 pick contention. So I guess if you're not making the playoffs, then your goal is the number 1 pick. But I think the Ducks are maybe a year or 2 away. They're much like the LA Kings in that regard. The Kings rebuilt very, very quickly. No pun intended for Jonathan Quick. I think that the Ducks are, like I said, maybe a year or 2 away. They will be better than the Sharks. I think within the next 3 years, the Ducks and Kings will be back at the top of the Pacific, with everybody else looking up at them. If all the moves that Anaheim did and all the young players that they drafted pan out, I think 1, 2, maybe 3 years at the most, and we'll see the Ducks back in action. But no, I think 20 to 25 wins is a good prediction for this team. John Gibson, like I said, I mean, could be traded or they keep him. I think you trade him, honestly. If you don't have a ton of points by the Olympic break, you got to look at trading him. You got to look at getting more draft capital. So Yeah, that was the Full Check podcast for August 12th of 2021. The next team on the docket, I want to say, is if we go in alphabetical order, is Arizona. We have Arizona next on the docket, and their little tiny window that they had is closed. But yeah, that'll be next time here on the Full Check Podcast. I am John Gervasi, and I am out. You can follow me on Twitter at full_check on Twitter. Thanks. Bye. That was peace sign, not flipping people.